On 5 News, a devastating earthquake hits central Italy. At least 73 people are killed, many more are missing as villages are destroyed. Rescuers try to free people trapped under the rubble after the earthquake struck while they slept. Also on the programme, a British woman is stabbed to death at a backpackers' hostel in Australia.
Today this train is completely ram-packed.
Jeremy Corbyn's railway row, a new revelation after tough questions for the Labour leader.
Well, no, can we move on, please? It's discussing the NHS today. We're discussing the NHS. Can you have an NHS question, please? Can we have an NHS question?
And crash landing, why things didn't quite go to plan for the world's longest aircraft. Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbet. At least 73 people are now known to have been killed by an earthquake in central Italy that's reduced entire towns to rubble. It struck in the middle of last night with a magnitude of 6.2. Buildings that were hundreds of years old collapsed, trapping many people underneath. Rescuers used their bare hands to dig for survivors. The epicentre was around 65 miles north of Rome, near Norcia. The worst of the damage has been there, and also in nearby Accumoli and Amatrice. From there, Julian Drucker reports.
This is one of the dozens of frantic rescue attempts taking place all over this devastated town. Could this woman be saved after so many couldn't? Wrapped in a blanket, they managed to dig her out and take her to safety. But when nature struck with such force and such cruelty in the middle of the night, the loss of life was always going to be considerable. And the number of dead is rising steadily. In the mountain town of Amatrice, a community has been torn apart. This survivor, Giancarlo, says, "I was in a house on top of the hill and that collapsed. I survived, thank God, and I hope the others are safe as well." He went on, "I'm 65 years old and I have never experienced anything like this. Small tremors, yes, but nothing this big. This is a catastrophe."
When you see the horrific scale of the devastation here, you can appreciate how this quake was felt 100 miles away in Rome. This was one of the town's biggest houses. Since 3:30 this morning, it's now one of the biggest piles of rubble here. The town of Accumoli was also hit hard. Another place where houses and buildings seemed to simply disintegrate. From despair came hope. After being buried for 9 hours in rubble, this 65-year-old man was pulled out. As he's brought to safety, this incredible moment of survival is celebrated. This woman's ordeal lasted several hours. The rescue worker told her to remain calm. She talked back to him. Thankfully, she was brought out alive. In Pescara del Tronto, the mayor spoke of a village which simply isn't there anymore. Almost all the houses here have collapsed. It is hard to believe humans could survive this, but for those who did and are yet to be found, these are vital hours.
And Julian, that's vital hard work still going on there.
Matt, the desperate search for life is going on right now. There are hopes that there are survivors, perhaps, even in this building here. There is a search team at the other side of the building at the moment doing their work. They've asked us not to show that at the moment, but I've been watching them for the last half hour or so. A huge digger like this one is ploughing through the metal and the concrete, lifting away the debris. Every few minutes, though, they turn off the engines. They demand silence. They even shush people, and that is so they can hear if anyone is shouting underneath. In the last hour or so, though, that hasn't happened. Italy has had dark days like this before. Of course, the quake in 2009 in L'Aquila, that's around 30 miles away from here. 309 people died that time in what is a more populated area. The only saving grace here is that the death toll is lower, but tonight, as the sun is setting, the hope is turning to hopelessness, as there are still so many people here lost.
Julian, many thanks indeed. A 21-year-old British backpacker has been killed and another British man critically injured after being attacked at a hostel in northeastern Australia. Mia Ailif Chung was stabbed by a man who's alleged to have shouted Allahu Akbar. Police say they're not treating it, though, as a terrorist attack. Jessica Omri has the latest.
Bubbly, caring and full of life. That's how Mia Ailif Chung has been described by her friends and co-workers. She was 21, enjoying a gap year in Australia. But just days after she filmed this video, she was stabbed to death in front of 30 onlookers. The attack happened at Shelley's Backpackers in the small town of Home Hill in Queensland. Another British man is in hospital in a critical condition. The hostel manager was also injured, the resident dog killed in the attack. Witnesses have described the chaotic scene. They say the French attacker repeatedly shouted Allahu Akbar, which means God is greatest in Arabic.
Whilst this information will be factored into the investigation, we are not ruling out any motivations at this early stage, whether they be political or criminal.
For Mia, this was a trip of a lifetime. She'd already visited Morocco, Turkey, Thailand and India. Australia was the final leg of the trip of her dreams. Updating friends and family on her adventures, she regularly posted on Facebook. Her latest update had described her new job on a nearby farm. Tributes have been pouring in for an infectiously happy girl. One read, "My beautiful friend and gorgeous soul, taken away too soon, under the worst circumstance possible. Still can't believe you're not coming back." Kyle Godwin said, "Today I lost a best friend, a girl like no other, one of the happiest, full of energy, delightful and hilarious girls I've come across." That energy now snatched away. Her pictures offer a glimpse of a life taken too soon. Jessica Omri, 5 News.
A young girl whose father drowned when they were swept out to sea in Cornwall has now died in hospital. 2-year-old Michaela Brunius had been on holiday in Newquay with her parents and 2 brothers when they were knocked off rocks by a large wave. Her father, Rudy, died shortly afterwards. A pensioner who shot dead his 81-year-old wife at a care home in Essex has been sentenced to 6 years in a psychiatric hospital. The court heard that Ronald and Rita King both had dementia and that he claimed to have shot her as a mercy killing. Turkey has sent tanks and armoured vehicles across the border into Syria as part of a new offensive against so-called Islamic State. The country's bombed a number of targets around the city of Jarablus. It comes days after IS killed 50 people and injured dozens more at a wedding celebration in Turkey. Now, the row about Jeremy Corbyn's train journey rumbles on. You might remember yesterday we told you how Virgin released CCTV appearing to show the Labour leader walking past empty seats, apparently contradicting his claims that the train was overcrowded or ram-packed. Well, today Mr Corbyn admitted there were unoccupied places, but he wanted 2 together so he could sit with his wife. Simon Viger has the story.
Good morning, it's nice to see you all this morning. Thank you very much.
Ignoring a question about Traingate, the Labour Party leader made straight for his reserved seat in his official car. At the morning's policy launch on the NHS, he was still ignoring questions on Traingate.
Well, no, can we move on, please? It's discussing the NHS today. We're discussing the NHS. Can you have an NHS question, please? Can we have an NHS question?
We live in a free country.
I know.
I'm entitled to ask you a question.
I'm very well aware we live in a free country.
A quick recap on Traingate. Mr Corbyn recorded this video blog on not finding a seat on a train to Newcastle.
Today this train is completely ram-packed. The staff on the train are absolutely brilliant, working really hard to help everybody. The reality is there's not enough trains. We need more of them.
But 22 minutes before recording that video, Virgin Trains claims this CCTV proves Mr Corbyn walked past empty, unreserved seats. He says they had bags on them and he wanted to have 2 seats together so he could sit with his wife. So how damaging is all this?
This story is being talked about by people, civilians, non-political geeks and obsessives, more than any political story that I've seen actually since Brexit, to be fair. So even though it is frivolous, frivolous stories can do politicians an awful lot of damage.
Corbyn campaign spin doctors wouldn't let me ask a question at the news conference. Perhaps they were fed up with trains, but of course that wasn't going to stop me.
All I wanted to ask was this. Given that NHS privatisation is being overshadowed by the railway privatisation issue, do you regret doing the video? Because it's not the sort of video you usually do. That's all I wanted to ask.
I find it very strange that people are so obsessed with this small issue. I got on a train, it was crowded, the staff got me a seat, I occupied that seat, I thank the staff for it, I recognise the work they do, but I also recognise that on trains all over this country, every day, there are people standing up.
He thinks the media has a one-track mind, but there are plenty of Labour MPs who believe the party is being derailed by its own leader.
And Simon, not just Jeremy Corbyn trying to explain himself today. His leadership rival Owen Smith has been facing questions as well.
Yeah, for him, Brexit doesn't mean Brexit. He wants a referendum, another one, on the deal hammered out with Brussels. He's also had to apologise for this remark he made at a campaign event where he said, "What you won't get from me is some lunatic at the top of the Labour Party." Well, the Corbyn campaign say that's offensive. This is his response.
I didn't use that language with reference to Jeremy. I used it with reference to myself. Somebody said I've been running around like a lunatic. If anybody's been offended by that, I apologise unreservedly.
And he says he'll use less colourful language in the future. All in all, another strange day in the strange world of the Labour leadership election.
Simon, thanks very much indeed. Still to come on the programme. Keeping us clean but polluting the oceans. Should a key ingredient in some shower gels and face scrubs be banned? And the Airlander has crash landed. The world's longest aircraft takes a bit of a nosedive. All that and more after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. A serving member of the British Armed Forces has been arrested on suspicion of terrorism related to Northern Ireland. The man was arrested in Somerset while searches have also been carried out in County Antrim. Danny Sinhar's with me now. Danny, you've got some more details about this man.
Absolutely. The man himself was 30 years old and is said to be originally from Northern Ireland himself. Now, police arrested him in Somerset today, and that really came against the backdrop of police discovering weapons in 2 parks close to County Antrim earlier this year. And they really believe they stumbled across the secret cache of dissident Republicans. Now, just to give you a flavour of the sort of things they found, we're talking about things such as pipe bombs and other ammunition. Now, police themselves, they're currently searching a house in Somerset and a wooded area. They're also continuing their operations and searches in Northern Ireland. And we have spoken to the Ministry of Defence. They've told us, "We are aware of a police investigation involving the arrest of a member of the armed forces under the 2000 Terrorism Act and will assist this investigation fully." Now, we understand today's arrest was very much intelligence-led, and police keen to stress there is no immediate threat to the public.
OK, Danny, thanks a lot. Detectives leading a criminal investigation into the Hillsborough disaster have released images of 19 potential witnesses that they want to speak to. They say the men were seen near a gate that was opened minutes before the fatal crush in 1989 and could provide vital information. But the family of one victim has told us she fears some may be unwilling to come forward. Warren Nettleford reports.
These are moving pictures taken from outside Gate C at Hillsborough in 1989. Now police have highlighted 19 fans they want to speak to. The police have stressed they've done nothing wrong, but they may remember crucial information as to what happened. 27 years later, the police want them to come forward.
It's been difficult because the images aren't very good from 1989. We've tried previous witness appeals with limited success, and what we've done now is try to contextualise it. We're trying to put people together so they may remember the group they were in rather than just the image themselves, because the images on their own have limited value.
In April this year, the most lengthy and expensive inquest in British legal history found that 96 fans were unlawfully killed. The inquest found the police order to open this gate led to fans being crushed on the terraces. 2 criminal investigations are now underway, and any new information could prove key. Brenda Cox lost her son Steve at Hillsborough. He was just 21 years old. Although many years have passed, She fears witnesses scarred by police treatment won't come forward.
You were still regarded as scum, and because of all the bad press, bad publicity, very few people mentioned Hillsborough because it brought out, hooligans and drunks, and we've been slated in every way, and it was just sort of like something they didn't want to revisit.
Despite the length of time since Hillsborough, those still grieving are demanding answers and accountability. More than a quarter of a century on, this isn't the first appeal for Hillsborough witnesses. It may not be the last. Warren Nettleford, 5 News.
We've got some breaking news now. 3 men have died after being pulled from the sea in Camber Sands in East Sussex. The emergency services were called to the beach this afternoon after reports say a person had got into difficulty. While they were there, 2 other men also got into trouble. The people haven't yet been identified. A soldier who was killed during a live firing exercise in Northumberland has been named as Private Conor McPherson. He was 24 years old and from the Black Watch. He was shot during training in Otterburn on Monday night. And Nigel Farage says he's going to share a stage with Donald Trump this evening to discuss Brexit. The former leader of UKIP is said to be in Mississippi, where the Republican presidential candidate is due to hold an event. The next time you pick up a bottle of shower gel or a tube of toothpaste, you might want to check what exactly is in it. Environmental campaigners say plastic microbeads found in many popular brands are building up in the world's oceans by the ton and are potentially damaging wildlife and entering the food chain. Now, a group of MPs say they should be banned. Here's Frankie McCamley.
Exfoliating your face, taking a shower and brushing your teeth, all everyday tasks with everyday products. But there are concerns certain toiletries could be causing harm elsewhere. The products in question contain tiny plastic microbeads, no bigger than 5 millimetres, used to help clean things like our skin and teeth. The concern is, though, these tiny pieces of plastic are entering the drainage system and building up in oceans around the world. So if you are using a product that contains microbeads, it's thought in just one single shower, around 100,000 tiny pieces of plastic could end up right here in the sea. And experts are concerned of the knock-on effect this will have on the environment.
Marine animals can actually eat the microplastics, and when they do so, some of them have shown reduced feeding rates and reduced growth rates as well, and also even effects on their reproductive rates.
And then at the end of the day, these microplastics could end up in the human food chain.
Yeah, so research has shown that there are microplastics in some seafood that is sold for human consumption. But at the moment, those levels are relatively low, and they're not thought to be a concern for human health. But there is more research needed.
A group of MPs are now calling for an outright ban on items that contain these microbeads.
The UK government needs to introduce a ban as quickly as possible on these microplastics in cosmetics. We know this is a transnational problem. Each year up to 200,000 tonnes of microplastics enter Europe's seas and oceans. And of course, once they're in that environment, they're no respecter of national borders.
The group, who represent toiletry and cosmetic manufacturers, says the industry has already begun phasing out microplastics and believes they'll be removed completely by 2018. Frankie McCamley, 5 News.
Just a week after taking off for the very first time, the world's longest aircraft has come back down to Earth with a bit of a bump. The Airlander 10, part plane, part airship, crashed during its second test flight in a field in Bedfordshire. A spokesman says the flight went really well. The only issue was when it landed. Here's Minnie Stevenson.
It is the largest aircraft in the world. Makers boasted that they had created a new breed of hyper-efficient aircraft. But today, the Airlander 10 came down to Earth with a bump after it was forced to crash land on only its second test flight.
Oh my God, it's actually just broken.
As you can make out from this photo, people can be seen evacuating, and although the cockpit was damaged, thankfully nobody on board was hurt. Despite the crash landing, a spokesman for the aircraft said today, and I quote, "The flight went really well, and the only issue was when it landed." The cause is not yet known, but an investigation has now been launched. Only 7 days ago, the Airlander 10 had taken its maiden voyage after more than 20 years in the making. At 92 metres long, it's 15 metres longer than the biggest passenger jet. It can land on water, on ice and in the desert, as well as reaching 20,000 feet. The makers are hoping to build 10 Airlanders a year by 2021 for surveillance and deliveries. But for now, the focus will be on how a £25 million aircraft with sky-high aspirations crashed so early on. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
That is just about it for now. I'll be back, though, at 6:30 with 5 News tonight, when I'll be speaking to a disaster expert about that earthquake in Italy. Just how vulnerable is the country to tremors? And are there any other popular European tourist destinations which are also at risk for them? We'll get the full story on that. I'll also be talking to this lady, Team GB hero Nicola Adams, who's just won her second gold boxing medal, but tells me she's looking forward to putting her feet up for a bit.
I'm going to go on a holiday, enjoy the beach, do some relaxing, maybe have a couple of cocktails, and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do when I get back.
More from Nicola at 6:30 and other stories as well, but that's just about it for now. Sian Welby has the weather next. The hottest day of the year today, almost 34 Celsius in Suffolk. So is it going to be just as warm tomorrow? Sian will have the latest. I'll see you in an hour. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.